right, well, welcome everyone. Welcome to our interview series where we have conversations with thought leaders in our industry about all sorts of things to do with leadership, creating healthy, high-performing organisations. And don't forget that this channel is about insight, influence and impact. And it gives me great pleasure to introduce Nicola Vague today, who is our interviewee. Hi, Nicola.
Hello, Phil. Great to be here.
Fantastic. What a beautiful environment you've got there. Look at the trees in the background.
Yeah, very special living on, it's my home outdoor office, so very special living on a treetop. We enjoy lots of nice time out here.
Yeah, you must feel inspired just working in that space alone, eh?
Very much so. It's a place where, great inspiration can arise just because there's a space and it's so connected with the outdoors.
Yeah, beautiful. So let's see if we can do some have an inspired conversation today.
Yes,
hey, how's that sound? Awesome. Well, I'm going to formally introduce you and then get you to talk a little bit about if I've kind of missed anything. But I'm really curious as to what drives you, and the reason, just for people watching the video, the reason I wanted to interview you today is we met a couple of years ago, didn't we? In terms of an accreditation for a wellness survey, and we really connected around this kind of work. And so for me, I really love some of your thoughts, and I really acknowledge the way you think about leadership and wellness and organisation. So I'm hoping that we can really pick your brain today and have a great conversation.
Right, thank you.
Okay, so Nicola founded Evolving Leaders in 2014 with a purpose of uplifting the personal wellbeing and capacity of leaders so that organisational cultures can thrive, which I really love. You work with leadership, you're a leadership development professional, speaker, and you work in the areas of culture and leadership, bridging the connection between leadership, culture and wellbeing to build healthy, high-performing organisations. I think that really speaks volumes to the kind of work you do. So, what kind of got you into this area in the first place? You've been doing it for quite a while now.
I have indeed. Over 20 years I've had the opportunity of working in a number of different organisations, in organisational development, organisational change roles. And specifically over the last 10 years, I have done a lot of my own personal development work and really turned up the speed on that.
Right.
And as a result, those two have really come together into this next chapter for Evolving Leaders. And so it's a real integration of what I believe is the personal leadership that's required for this next era of leadership development to create living, breathing human systems that are great places to work. So.
Fantastic. And I think that's one of the reasons why we're really connected as well, because for me, the way we think about human systems and organisational systems can really enhance the work we do in organisations. And I don't see a lot of people being able to think and talk in that way. So I really acknowledge that part as well. So.
Thank you.
All right, so I've got a couple of questions, and some of these will be without notice, and some of them we had a very short conversation about. So we didn't want to make this a scripted kind of interview, so it's very organic, which I hope will be a lot of value for people watching. So if we think about human systems and organisations, we might even use the phrase human-centred organisations. What do you reckon it would look like or feel like to be part of a human-centred organisation if I was actually sitting in one?
Great question. So in terms of, my sense with that, and I think probably we've all had some experience or moments of that when we've had those wonderful experiences in a team that may only be for a short period of time or a little bit more enduring. But for me, one of the core things is that we really feel like we can bring our whole selves into the workplace. So we don't have to leave part of ourselves, metaphorically, at the front door when we come to work. We can bring our greatness. We all have our human greatness, and we can also bring our human imperfections with us, and the ups and downs that are part of being a human being into that place. And within that place, within that team, within that organisation, there's a place where all of that can be held, can be harnessed and accessed for creativity and innovation. And because I'm bringing all of myself into that workplace, I feel motivated to go above and beyond. I feel as though there've been the conversations that where I'm aware of the things that matter to me and how that aligns to the purpose of the organisation. So there's been the investment in the learning, in the development, and in the alignment between who I am, what matters to me, and how I can make a contribution towards the organisational greater purpose.
Yeah, I really love that, Nicola. I wonder, what do you think stops us from bringing our whole selves? Because we hear about this a bit, don't we? But I'm not sure we've made much progress in organisations over a number of years about giving permission for people to bring their whole selves. And I think sometimes it's misrepresented. I think sometimes people feel like it means we have to kind of share everything about ourselves in perhaps inappropriate ways. What do you mean by bringing your whole self to work?
Look, I think the work that was done with the Google Aristotle project is a really good reference point here that talks about the number one factor that impacts team performance, and that being psychological safety. So psychological safety for me is creating an environment. So as a leader, creating an environment where people can feel safe enough to have a voice and put their ideas forth. They can feel as though their contribution is valued, that they can feel as though those different perspectives are really valued and an important part of that conversation. So I think that's one aspect of it is the psychological safety. But I think the other thing is that we haven't been focusing enough, I believe, in the leadership development space on the personal leadership component of leadership development. And I think that's what needs to be the differentiating factor moving forward. So it's a lot more work, I believe, around who am I, what matters to me, significant increase in self-awareness, taking personal responsibility for my own development, and a co-responsibility with the organisation or team that I'm in. I think are some of the things that would really help in that regard.
So in terms of being a human-centred organisation, what else would that look like and feel like? And I guess that one of the underlying questions I have, and maybe some people who are sceptical or cynical around this, why would we care about creating a human-centred organisation? Why do we care?
Why do we care? Why do we care? Look at that. That's a question that really touches me quite deeply, because I do what I do because I deeply care. Why do we care? Because people everywhere are suffering. I see people in a world with all this technology and connection, which is fabulous for the purposes of what we're doing here today, because it is building connection. But I just see increasing levels of disconnection. And from a human perspective, we're actually yearning for intimacy and connections. I'm not talking about sexual intimacy. I'm just talking about intimacy and a realness where we can be vulnerable. We can actually connect with how we're feeling, and we can feel safe enough to express how we're feeling.
I really love that word vulnerability, and I like many people love Brené Brown's work, and I love her kind of narrative around bulletproof are perfect, but it's not part of the human condition. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I absolutely agree with that. No more to say. I absolutely agree with that.
So what do you think are the blocks for us being vulnerable? Because often people associate vulnerability with weakness, but of course Brené Brown talks about vulnerability is actually an act of courage.
Absolutely. I think one of the big things is that most people are walking around maybe accessing 10% of their overall potential that's available. And for me, I line that up until to match with our 3 centres of body intelligence, which there's more and more scientific research that's now validating that. So in my experience, a lot of people are stuck in their head centre, so the centre of insight, which is really important. But what we're needing to do, and one of the things that I think is blocking us being able to be more vulnerable, is actually coming into the wisdom of our bodies, into the knowing of our bodies, and connecting with feeling and sensation in our bodies, which might sound really woo-woo and out there and not the place for leadership development in corporate, but I've seen it too many times, and I know what can happen when people and leaders can start to connect to something that is beyond the mental chat, the mental chatter, into something that is more connected with their intuitive knowing and their gut sense. So I think that's one of the things.
Yeah, I really like that. What when you say their intuitive knowing and being more connected with their body sensations, are we really talking about mindfulness? Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Mindfulness is certainly one of the ways that can be an access for us to come into those different centres. Absolutely. And in fact, as a leader, unless we make a conscious choice to carve out space and to recognise that something's not working here for me, I'm not really focusing on the things that matter in my life, work's pulling me all in, or I've let this relationship go, or I'm not showing up in a capacity where I'm able to be there for other people in the organisation because I'm constantly stressed and running in overdrive. So I think the starting point for so much of this is a practice like mindfulness. So making a conscious choice that you're going to create change, and then starting to, or getting some support to establish a practice that gives you a break from the barrage of thoughts. So I understand we have something like 80,000 thoughts a day, give or take, and that something like 80% of those add no value to how we want to move forward in our life. So it's like
that's amazing.
It's like the white noise, it's cranked right up. Okay, so if we want to create change and we want to hear something that's beyond that white noise, we actually have to do something differently. And that first step is creating space and starting to develop a mindfulness practice, or even just taking 5 minutes to consciously connect with your breath when you wake up in the morning. It's a really good start. Yeah.
So this notion of connection, and I guess it starts with connection with self, but where are we going wrong as a kind of as a race? We seem to be more and more disconnected. There's been a lot of literature around screen time and the digital age, but I don't know, where do you think this is heading?
Look, I really hope there has to be a turning around. I've got a couple of teenagers, and I know the amount of time they spend on technology. But I think that, the key thing is some of those practices where we actually come together, like, in a family environment at the dinner table, in a work environment, in a team setting where maybe phones don't come into that place, and we actually start to put that down and not be driven by the agenda of the email that's come through or the text that's come through, but actually starting to create some more discipline around that so that we get back into the driving seat with technology. Because, I don't think anyone would disagree that we need to have more time connecting with each other, in life and work. That's the bit that makes us feel fulfilled. That's the bit that helps to support each other through highs and lows. And we need to do that. Interestingly, just a little story yesterday. My daughter, who's 18, my eldest daughter, she had a scenario with a friend that was very very difficult, and we were talking through the best ways of how to manage that. And she said, so I said, look, it sounds like it'd be really nice to actually write this girl a letter and then, put the money you owe her into the envelope. And she goes, nice. What is this, Mum? Why can't I just text her and, transfer the money into her bank account? And so, that was a real sort of moment of reflection for me in terms of I actually think to go back to some of those old ways of, writing gratitude, writing appreciation, getting back to giving birth cards, some of those things that help people to feel valued and heard.
Yeah, I really love that. It feels like we're kind of converging in society, doesn't it? We've got technology, the digital age. We've got the ever relenting pressure for more productivity. And then we've got us as human beings in the middle. And I'm just not sure we're kind of coping all that well with the convergence of productivity, technology, the increasing demands, and let alone overlay family and all those demands. What recommendations or thoughts do you have for people, managers in organisations who you and I deal with all the time? How do we help them connect more fully, both with themselves, but also, relationships at work?
One of the blogs that I recently wrote was talking about mastering the art of thinking and doing and feeling and being. I think that's a really great lens or starting point for people to start to check in around that. So I think there's for people to become more consciously aware that they're mostly in a thinking and doing space, which is valuable, but when there's no space to reflect, and this is something in a human organisation, there's space to reflect and learn and grow. They're not constantly just finishing that and on to the next thing. So I think this lens of thinking and balancing thinking and doing and feeling and being is a really good way to start to do that. So there's some, practical and tangible ways to start to do that and start to shift the behaviour change around that, in the way that team meetings are conducted, in the way that, post-implementation reviews are done, in the way that performance conversations are had. There's a whole reflection is really one of these key skills and practices that we needs to be woven through for the role for the individual leader, for the team, and for the organisation. So through the systems, the processes, and the culture, I think that would be a really good starting place. How can we build in a pause? How can we build in a reflection? Just one idea.
Yeah, it's what I love that again. I find that when I work with teams, and you may find this as well, that half the value they get is actually having the space to have a conversation. And as much as it might damage my ego to think, actually, I've got all this great stuff that I want to share with you, and models and frameworks, and then you do the review at the end of the day, or 2 days or 3 days, whatever it is. And what was the best part about the offsite or the retreat? And they go, just connecting with each other. Do you find that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, look, and I see the same in individual coaching with leaders as well. Often it doesn't matter what the diagnostic is. It's the commitment that the person's made, or in some cases has been made on their behalf from the organisational perspective, where they've carved out space. So it actually comes back to this. If we want to create change, the first thing we have to do is to carve out space. And from that, yes, the actual reflection needs to go. It leads me on to another thing in terms of, I really think some of the key things for leaders to focus on are this reflection piece, as I've spoken about, the connection piece that we've also touched on, and this being piece, so reflection, connection, feeling and being. And there's I'm writing more and more blog posts around this, so if people are interested in that, by all means, they might like to visit and just check those out.
Fantastic. I was actually going to ask you about that, if we could put a link in the description below with that model particularly that you've talked about, those 4 dimensions. I think that'd be really helpful if you're okay with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I haven't, they're not explicitly sitting together in one model, but they're really woven through, woven through everything that I'm writing about.
Awesome. So I guess just to come back to the conversation about healthy organisations, and again, so I think we've in part, kind of talked about why would we care, but for all the numbers-driven people who might be listening to this, or, who think that organisations or believe that organisations are all about, results. What do you think the so what is about having a healthy organisation where we really do care about people?
Look, I think over the next decade, Phil, we will start to see the words well-being and performance being used interchangeably. I actually don't think they're separate. I don't think they're separate. And so I think there will be a bit of a shift in regard to that. You know, in terms of it might take some people, of course, to get on board with that for the longer perspective, but healthy organisation is unequivocally a high-performing, achieving sustainable results, but there is this sense of greater purpose, so it's not just driven by profitability, it's driven by this greater sense of purpose, and things like valuing people, creating an environment to learn and grow, where people can learn and grow, and driving performance. So, you know, I don't have anything hard and fast to beyond that, but I don't see them as being separate.
Yeah, and I know some of the research suggests, and I know we're talking about health in a different way here, but that lens of performance and health, and those organisations who focus on both can potentially derive about a 3x kind of benefit in overall results and sustainability. So the numbers are there, but for many people it still remains some kind of block that if I focus on results and drive results, then that's going to be good for the organisation. But there's dozens, maybe hundreds of case studies that suggest that isn't it. Do you agree? That's not the way to high performance and sustainability.
Yeah, and look, absolutely. And I think it will be, you know, there'll be certain leaders that are able to connect with us and understand this, and already do. And they will be the early adopters of really creating these human organisations, as I call them, and the results will speak for themselves. It's a no-brainer. You know, we look after people. People feel like they belong. They feel valued. That motivates them to do the good job. And if there's this connection between who I am as an employee and what matters to me, and bringing all of that, we're unlocking energy that has previously not been available in the system. You know, energy that is productive energy is being turned into goods. So we're freeing up that. We're cleaning out the blocks where, we're getting to what's going on underneath the surface of what's happening and sorting that out. And that's the path towards well-being and sustainable performance.
Talking about energy, you may have noticed I've got significantly darker over the last 10 seconds. Our office has this thing, if you don't move, the lights go out. So if you're wondering why I'm looking a bit darker, that's why. So I really I love the connection that you're making between well-being and performance, or wellness and performance. And most people, I'm just taking a punt here, most people would not necessarily see the connection. Yes, they know wellness and healthy might be good for business because there's less sick leave and what have you, but actually, I know you wrote recently about cultural transformation and wellness are the same thing. Do you want to speak just a little bit about that before we start to wrap up?
Yeah. So I believe that from an organisational development and leadership perspective, that well-being is the North Star. You know, is the North Star that we need to be working towards. You know that, and I also agree with what you're saying at the moment, that well-being is very much, there's a lot happening in that, but it's happening at a very tactical level and intervention. So, there's a lot of organisations are committing in terms of, gym memberships or yoga classes or, fresh fruit in the kitchen, those sorts of things. And they're all important and very valuable. But what a lot of leaders, and I think OD practitioners are not yet seeing, is that well-being needs to be the absolute number one from an org development perspective, and that it's a strategic issue that sits right alongside your cultural transformation. They're partners in one and the same thing. And I think we need to be supporting leaders to start to make that connection and do it much more explicitly. So it's not doing another thing, it's integrating the approach, it's integrating well-being, not having well-being over here as a little tactical intervention, but how do we create a healthy high-performing, vibrant organisation, that's all about cultural transformation, and it's not separate to wellbeing.
Yeah.
But it means different
I know
things.
which organisation. Oh, sorry, you keep going.
I was going to say it means different things and a different way of going around leadership development and cultural transformation. So.
Yeah, that's right. I was going to say I know which organisation I'd prefer to be part of, an organisation that focuses on performance and health, or one that just focuses on performance. And I know you and I work with many organisations who have too much of a bias towards results rather than people, culture, wellness. Or, for me, the engine room of performance over a period of time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, look, I've really enjoyed the conversation. It's been fascinating. I wonder how people might find out a bit more about you or connect with you if they wanted to do that, Nicola.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Phil. My website is www.evolvingleaders.com.au. From there, you can sign up to my mailing list. I have a blog that's called The Human Organisation that I'm writing frequently for. And there'll be other things to come in terms of podcasts, etc. So I'm very much interested around the leadership that's required and the personal leadership that's required to build human organisations. So if that resonates for you, I'd love to connect with you and involve as many people in this conversation, because it's a conversation that needs to be.
And I can attest, and I've given you this feedback offline, that your writing is very insightful, and I really enjoy it, and I've signed up already. So if anyone's listening who likes to read good quality material, I'd highly recommend that you sign up to Nicola's blog articles, and they are regular, and some of the models I think are quite elegant as well. So I love that. And we do have one little piece that we haven't yet shared, and you and I have come together to think about how we might support teams more effectively over a 6-month program. Do you want to just talk to that briefly? We don't have to go into much detail, but I'm really excited about partnering with you on a program like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So so the vision that we've really shared is around a 6-month program, as you've indicated, working with a group of leaders in a team. And we can do that through 2 different lenses. We can do that depending on what the problem is that you actually feel like you need solved in your team at the moment, what the presenting problem is. We would support you in terms of a team culture development piece. But equally, if you felt that the lens was much more around a wellbeing focus, then there's the opportunity for us to really come in and create that same sort of learning journey, but through a lens of wellbeing. So typically that would be like some sort of diagnostic around a cultural wellbeing diagnostic. There would be an individual coaching component, because that's a really important part in this whole connect to me piece. And then a series of half-day team workshops where we come together and we really work on in my language, connect to us, connect to our reality, and connect to our learning through that journey. So I love it. Forward to being able to work with you on that, Phil. So
yeah. No, I'm really looking forward to it as well. And I guess in different ways and shapes and forms over the years, we've both achieved pretty excellent results. So I think coming together, joining forces and bringing our respective strengths and a shared belief about how important this work is, I'm really confident that this will be a great program for anyone to explore further. And again, we'll link everything up in the description below in terms of how people can find out more. So I think we're probably just about out of time. I haven't been too watchful of the time, but I reckon it must be about half an hour, because I've enjoyed our conversation. So once again, Nicola, thank you very much, and really appreciate your time in being part of the interview series. I've got a lot from today's discussion, and I might just throw back to you for any final comments or thoughts.
Look, just to say thanks, Phil, for the opportunity. I'm at the start of this very next exciting chapter, even though it's been 4 years in the coming to this point, and I really appreciate the opportunity to have this interview and for us to come together and share our different wisdom and experience to be able to really support leaders in creating, living, breathing, high-performing teams and organisations. So thank you again. Appreciate the time.
Okay, thanks, Nicola. Bye.
Thanks, Phil. See you later.